Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a fantastic day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. So I think that the excitement within the cryptocurrency space is beginning to get to people. This was one of the most popular news stories that was out there. Former Coinbase Chief Technology Officer, his name is Balaji Srinivasan, is detailing a seriously bold Bitcoin price prediction. This guy believes that this is actually going to happen. In a series of tweets, Srinivasan says he's willing to bet that Bitcoin, here we go, everybody with me? He thinks that Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million. We've heard that number before. Everyone believes at some point Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million. This guy believes Bitcoin is going to $1 million in 90 days. That is 90, not 900. He thinks $1 million 3 months from now. The bet would be with professional player Isaac Haxton, with part of the proceeds going towards the charity Give Directly. The investment guru, I would take away the word guru if you're saying in 90 days, told 780,000 people on Twitter that he thinks that banks are in serious trouble after heavily investing in long-dated U.S. treasuries, and Bitcoin's rise will coincide with a major economic crash. So I'm not sure how many of you have been really paying attention to all the banking news that's been going on. I made a couple of videos on the other channel, Money Rules, about what's happening with each individual bank, because there's just a lot that there is to cover. So where we currently are at the moment, it appears as if we are lightly mimicking and or echoing the 2008 financial crisis, where if you were not old enough, which is weird to say because it's 2023, or simply did not pay attention to it, markets around the world collapsed. They didn't fall. They didn't things are down by 2%. No. Banks and companies, their valuations, many of them dropped by 85 to 90% over the course of a 2-week period. And they stayed there as we were right about to, we were 5 toes in to a depression. 40%, that is 40% of the world's wealth was wiped out during that event. Yes, 40%. It was a huge amount. You must have remembered, seeing all the housing problems and people selling their homes for $1 because they wanted to get anything that they absolutely could for it. We are now in a situation where banks are collapsing nearly every other day, and or are now trying to get re-bailed out. And it's really insane because it seemingly almost came out of nowhere. We were talking about a bank that dealt with cryptocurrency clients. And then that moved to Silicon Valley Bank, and then it moved to, was it First National, First something? And then that moved to Credit Suisse. And then we got news that many other banks, their valuations were also dropping, or Moody was lowering their score as a bank, which led other people to get scared. Their stocks began to drop. They didn't have any more money to be liquid. They began to ask governments and other banks for help. One other bank, like a day or two ago, I think it got $11 billion from multiple other banks, and that did nothing. It didn't help them at all, and the bank is still going down. So the word is contagion. The idea is if one is doing bad or one is having a problem, then they're probably something's wrong with all of them, and they're all going to go down. Now, this is where the camp begins to divide, because on one side you have the originals, and then on the other side you have the newbies. The originals believe that this is now the time for Bitcoin to clutch and to basically show its worth, and everyone around the world will mentally decide that fiat, because this is what, once again, what Bitcoin is made for. Bitcoin is, and I air quote here, made for situations like this. The idea is that as the old system begins to collapse, people who are into Bitcoin realizing, and they go, oh my gosh, this is why Bitcoin was created. They go to buy more Bitcoin as a safe haven asset, or whatever you want to call it. And then therefore Bitcoin's price goes up as the other systems begin to go down. The newbie camp follows a more traditional financial idea in that we have seen just in the last year, like this is a relatively new phenomenon. Just within the last year and some change, that as the stock market goes down, Bitcoin goes down, which isn't a thing. That's not how the correlation has ever been. Or rather, and as the stock market goes up, Bitcoin's price also goes up as well. The idea is if the traditional financial markets have a bunch of money being pushed into them, Bitcoin also benefits as a speculative asset. And it's speculative in that no one knows where Bitcoin's going to be in 15 years, who's going to be using it, what it will be used for. The speculation, continues, is one of the ideas. But intertwined in this is the idea that as the banking system would collapse and the money, so now we're seeing news about bailouts, and this is one of the main reasons why Bitcoin also began in the year 2008-9, beginning 2010, was that banks can print money at will. And one of the benefits for Bitcoin is that we have gotten indications over the last 2 weeks. You might have noticed Bitcoin rising quite rapidly in price. Why was Bitcoin doing that? Because in 2021, when prices were going completely insane for everything but focusing on the cryptocurrency market, the news of a continuation of not even a drip, the faucet was completely on, of money from governments with a 0% interest rate, is that people would simply take this, and I, lightly quote here, this near free money, and they'd be throwing it into different markets, and Bitcoin was one of those markets that also benefited from it. The current discussions that are happening right now, because the markets are so bad, is that eventually, now here, grain of salt, no one knows what's going to happen. But the ideas from a lot of economists and analysts that we are so bad, like things are so terrible right now between the banks and the stock market not rising and all this other stuff, that once again, at some point the Fed is going to have to stop raising interest rates. That we know. It is going to be a thing. But B, the discussion now is that when are they going to lower interest rates? You might have heard that on television relatively recently. The idea has been to stop raising interest rates. One more raise, bam, kablamo, cool. And then they would wait to the end of the year to reevaluate the economy. If banks keep dropping, if these companies keep firing tens of thousands of people over and over at the exact same time, one of these solutions is to make debt a little bit more attractive. How do you make debt a little bit more attractive to the economy? You lower the interest rate. What happens when we had a lower interest rate before? Prices went up. What happens when prices went up? You kind of get the idea. So we're in this, and I would assume that this person on the screen, Balaji, is probably one of the original people, because when you talk about the old system collapsing, and how many times have I mentioned this? 38 bajillion. When you talk about the old system collapsing and we already have a system that can replace it, and you see that banks are not doing well, the idea normally would have been, well, of course, Bitcoin is only going to benefit from the collapse of the old system. But now you have the original people who think the collapse of the old system is now, like not yesterday, not in 9 months, 90 days, completely gone. Bitcoin's at $1 million, or the other side of people who are like, well, okay, the collapses are going to happen. they're going to get bailed out. And with that bailout money and the stopping of and or lowering of interest rates, prices will also completely skyrocket. According to Balaji, his last name is a little difficult for me. The banks binged on government bonds 2 years ago when fiscal stimulus at the height of the Coco Roro drastically reduced the demand for typical loans. The investor also said that financial institutions made the decision to accumulate an enormous amount of government bonds under the impression that the Federal Reserve would keep interest rates low. He said they had good reason to believe this. Powell said he'd be patient on rate hikes as late as the 3rd of November 2021. Then he got renominated on the 22nd of November and hiked rates much faster than anyone expected. A lot of people were expecting 0.25 and or 0.5% interest rate hikes. But he was like, nope, 0.75 from the get-go. And that's what spooked markets because people were assuming we'd have a lighter transition into the mess that we're currently in right now. Not that he would just like slingshot us there immediately, which even Yellen and the FDIC admitted caused the current banking crisis. Hiking from 10 years of near zero interest rates in the 2010s was a surprise attack on every dollar holder, so anyone who bet on long-term treasuries got destroyed in 2021, and now anyone who bets on short-term treasuries is going to be destroyed in 2023. Srinivasan says that the threat of a banking sector meltdown puts Bitcoin in a position to rapidly ascend in value against the US dollar. The angel investor believes that Bitcoin could meteorically rise to $1 million in just 90 days. Do you understand the staggering amount of money that would have to enter the cryptocurrency market for this to happen? The idea of a $200,000 Bitcoin, nay, $250,000 Bitcoin, comes from a Swiss bank. This had to be 5, 6, 7 years ago. This is when Bitcoin was really, just getting into the spotlight. The idea is that at $250,000, Bitcoin would apparently be large enough to, and I use this lightly, usurp the US dollar, push it aside. People would be able to use it because it would be large enough and have more than enough liquidity inside of it. $250,000 per Bitcoin. The idea of a $500,000 Bitcoin means that people holding gold and silver have begun to sell off in rapid succession. Seeing that, and I don't know if logic will hit that hard. We have seen charts. There are charts now. You can look at them, find them on your phone. Bitcoin versus gold chart, like price charts. You can see from 2008, 2009, how much gold has moved up comparatively to Bitcoin. Bitcoin wins by several million %. That's not a fake number. Bitcoin has gone up by literally several million %, while gold has gone up, I think, 4 or 5% over the course of the same 15-something year period. These people would have to lose faith in gold and start selling off as much gold as possible, and that extra capital that they have would then be pushed into Bitcoin. When you talk about a $1 million Bitcoin, a lot of people believe that we are going to see a $1 million Bitcoin after the next 2 halvings. That is to say, in the next 5 to 6 years. Bitcoin's minted supply goes so low, so many crises, inflation, you name it, people just in general trying to buy Bitcoin. The buying pressure will be immense. Bitcoin's price ends up going to several hundred thousand. Eventually, in a self-fulfilled prophecy, it ends up hitting a $1 million coin. What you need to get to a $1 million Bitcoin is people begin to lose faith in stocks and bonds. So people begin to say, the stock market roughly gets me around 7 to 15% a year, depending on how good I am at buying stocks. Bitcoin has nearly gotten 300% over the same exact time. I need to sell off my stocks and other bonds that I may have or other things with my company or my job to accumulate Bitcoin. Bitcoin continues going up. The news ends up being made. People are selling off their stocks. The stock market goes down. Where's that money going? It's going into Bitcoin. For that to happen in the next 3 months, I think not only would be terrifying, because it means that the old, like everything that we've known and have grown up with has completely shattered in a matter of 90 days. And when you talk about how we get to a $10 million Bitcoin, for those of you who are wondering, you get to a $10 million Bitcoin by people selling their homes. Not joking. Because the value then becomes so exponential that every halving, Bitcoin's price doubles and or triples. People go, well, I own this home that goes up in 7, 8, 9, 10% in value every single year. Bitcoin keeps doubling every single year. Why would I hold on to my home? This is all the theoretical. This is not necessarily what is going to take place, but it's kind of the idea of how we get to these numbers. This was incredibly popular news. I think we have gotten to the point where, and listen, we're not even in the bull market yet. We are in, prices are moving up. By the time we get to around a solid $35,000, $40,000 Bitcoin, we can all start clutching our pearls and being like, okay, here we go, because things are going to get real. By the time we get near a $60,000 Bitcoin, that's where, like, okay, full steam ahead. This is it. That's when I will be, panicking and throwing even more money into the market. That is me personally. Do not follow my reckless ways as I have them. But actually, hold on. There's a little bit more here. I think he explains, and I quote. He said, "This is the moment that would redenominate. That the world redenominates on Bitcoin as digital gold, returning to a model much like before the 20th century. What's going to happen is that individuals, then firms, then large funds will buy Bitcoin, then sovereigns like El Salvador and tiny crypto-friendly countries. The big move will be when a U.S. state like Florida or Texas or a normal country, I don't know why normal's in quotes there, like Estonia, Singapore, Saudi, Hungary, or the UAE buys Bitcoin." I'll get to that in 1 second. "And when Prime Minister Narendra Modi tells India's central bank to buy Bitcoin even as a hedge, it's over." I have a friend, I haven't spoken to him in a while. Hello, sir, if you're still listening to the channel. This is what he's thought for. I mean, he's one of those people who kind of like, he'll say something and you think he's like over exaggerating. And then when you kind of like listen to what he's actually just said, you're like, oh crap, he's completely correct. I think Florida or Texas buying up Bitcoin as a hedge or part of their reserves, I feel like is more likely than anything else that we've heard from anyone talking about what's going to happen with Bitcoin in a very long time. I'm actually surprised because, for those of you who don't know, the mayor of Miami, I believe it is, wants to turn Miami into like a Bitcoin hub. And I think that probably I don't think there's much that would even hold them back from being able to acquire Bitcoin legally and saying like, hey, we have $1 million left over in the treasury. Everything else has been paid for. We're going to now use this money to buy up some Bitcoin. If we hear at any point that any country, and he's completely correct, especially for Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Hungary also definitely, or I mean like Dubai, I don't think India's far too afraid of doing anything Bitcoin-esque. India's been having far too many conversations with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank over the last couple of years. I don't think that they have it in them to circumvent or try to go around these institutions, because India is currently trying to become a gigantic world power. I think India has like 1.3 billion people. It's something astronomically insane when you think about it. But India is now on the cusp of being able to become a gigantic world power because of the amount of man and woman power that they currently have behind them. I don't think that India would be it. But Florida and Texas, I'm surprised that they haven't done so. And I could totally see Saudi and Hungary. announcing, if you've been paying attention to the Hungary news over the last couple of years, their internal workings have changed or were changed during Coco Roro. So that's something also very interesting. As you might have imagined, incredibly popular news. I do personally believe that we will eventually get there. I have seen myself over the years that the system isn't doing too well. I think the mainstream audience is now getting whiffs. They're walking by the kitchen and smelling what's cooking as to what's actually going on. I think the public was shocked when they heard that the FDIC isn't really FDICing anything, because the trillions of dollars held within the U.S. banking system, not all of it is actually insured, because they're never expecting everyone to want to take out their money at the exact same time. When the crisis began, it was the 16th largest bank on the planet that was having monetary issues. But if all 16 had issues and everyone ran to the bank, people would realize, and it just takes like an instance. It takes just one event. And this is what I think people live. And I don't blame people for wanting to live comfortably. You hear that crises happen around the world, and I think we as humans go, oh, that's a shame. And then you look around you and you don't see a crisis immediately within your vicinity. And you go, well, it's terrible to be them. At least it's not happening to me. And then the moment it happens to you, I say this lightly, in the West, begin to panic, because we're used to hearing that it's over there. It's somewhere else. It doesn't have to actually do with us. So the dramatic shock of hearing that this bank that you've banked on doesn't have all of your money, or rather they need a bailout from the bank's bank to be able to actually ensure that you're getting all your money back. But this is how banks work. This is why we have Bitcoin. This is literally the reason why Bitcoin was created. When I say, and I think people, it's a very weird line being in the cryptocurrency space. I have, to the best of my abilities, I am only human, tried to make this channel as forthcoming and straight edge as possible. Sometimes you hear me talk about Solana because it's a terrible project, or I talked about Tron. It's because these are like blatantly outright. These look like terrible things to me. So I'll talk negatively about them. But besides that, I try to stand down the middle. And I think a lot of people can't conceptualize that there is someone within the cryptocurrency space who's just bringing news and information. That I don't have videos where I'm like, oh snaps, here we go. Bitcoin's going up to $78 million. If you're not buying, you're a loser. Like these kinds of things. You might have seen recently as well. It was in the crypto sphere news that there are a number of crypto YouTubers who are, it's alleged against them that they were promoting FTX. You may realize like there's no promotion that happens on this channel. I have some affiliate links, and I talk about Ledger once in a blue moon, or especially if like a hack happened, I let you know that you can self-custody and things like that. But I've noticed so much backlash to my channel over the years because I think people can't really wrap their heads around like someone just giving them information as to what's happening, as opposed to being very hypey and trying to tell you. I've tried my best. If at any point I slipped up, it's just me. I do everything on all the channels that I have. It is literally just me. I do not have an editor. I do not have anyone making my thumbnails. It is all me, and I try my best to help out as much as possible. Anyway, getting back on track. I hope. Now listen. I do believe at some point we are going to see a $1 million Bitcoin. I do, however, hope that it does not happen within the next 90 days, because I don't think I want to see the collapse of society happen that quick. That's kind of, that's kind of a bit much for me. $1 million Bitcoin would constitute a $40,000-$50,000 Ether. We'd probably see a good $38 XRP, a $47 Cardano. You know, these things would be monumental, but that is at the cost of literally everyone else you know who is not in crypto coming to you and being like, yeah, my house is worth like 15 cents now. Can you spare a Satoshi? So that seems a bit intense. Yes. The most, I mean, you can't make an announcement like this that you think that Bitcoin's going to $1 million in 90 days and not have it be incredibly popular news. Former Coinbase CTO says that Bitcoin will hit $1 million in 90 days. Balaji says hyperinflation is happening now and says 1 million. And listen, if we get there, we get there. Something is clearly wrong with the banking system. I think we are going to continue to see a rather large number of bailouts. Those are definitely on the horizon all over the place because something is not right. But 90 days, you know, gigantic question mark in the sky. Also, tying loosely, directly into all of this as well. It says an optimistic result for the cryptocurrency market at the forthcoming Federal Open Market Committee meeting is possible, given the continued banking crisis and macroeconomic worries in the United States. So here we are. We made it, everyone. Remember last summer? You must remember when we were getting those like, whoa, why is the interest rates rising so quickly every single month? I told you because we were told that March was going to be it. March was meant to, like the March that we're in now, meant to be the end of the interest rate rises. The idea being we would get towards 5% and or at 5% as an interest rate, and therefore the Federal Reserve would stop and wait until the end of this year to reevaluate the situation and see where things are going. The idea being if you raise interest rates, it puts a stop on inflation and or slows things down. They've been raising rates at an unprecedented rate, if you will, and it hasn't helped. Inflation actually went up a tiny little bit a little while ago, like very recently. And this is also coinciding with the collapse of the banks. So, I don't even know where to begin. The idea now is the Fed has a couple of options. They are either going to choose on the 21st and 22nd, now, whether they're going to raise interest rates or not raise interest rates or lower interest rates. There's a 0% chance of them lowering interest rates. Them stopping interest rates, I forgot what the percentage of people who voted and or believe are on this, but they're probably going to raise interest rates. We just recently got news that it was believed that the European Central Bank was also going to stop raising interest rates. However, Credit Suisse began to collapse, and the European Central Bank, I believe they raised interest rates by 0.5 point. Christine Lagarde announced that the interest rate rose because they thought that people would panic if they didn't. Now, you may sit there and go, that doesn't make any sense. People would actually be joyous. It's kind of like, imagine every single day, I'm thinking of something off the cuff. Every single day I told you that I would bring you breakfast. And I'm like, at some point it's going to stop. Around March, it's going to stop. But then in January, I don't come there anymore. And you're like, whoa. Like you panic and completely freak out. So she said the idea was that they wanted to raise it just to let people know that they were still trying to get inflation down, but they didn't want to stop it. But when the moment they rose the interest rate for the European Central Bank, the other banks around the world also freaked out because it was an indication that the Fed might do the exact same thing and continue pushing down markets. Don't forget, just 2 weeks ago, the head of the Fed said that he is willing to break markets. He is literally willing to break and destroy economies to get US dollar inflation down. I wonder who would be opposed to that. Maybe everyone else on the planet. This is the now situation. the Fed is going to make an announcement, and it is going to be one of those three things. The most likely is that they're going to raise interest rates. From those original three ideas, another three sprout from it. Will we get a 0.25% raise? Will we get 0.5%? Or will they see that things are looking incredibly bad, and will they try to raise it by 0.75%? Another 7.75% is going to obliterate markets, destroy them. Why we are having these banking issues now is because of the rapid interest rate rises. If they raise it by 0.75, we are in trouble. If they continue raising interest rates over the course of this year by 0.75%, we're in even bigger trouble. Get ready for your first depression, everyone, because that's going to be really fun to talk about in a video. But the general idea is that they're going to raise it by 0.25%. And then at that point, as we've seen from the last 0.25% raise, markets took that as a very bullish indication and things began to pump. On the 21st and 22nd of March, the Federal Open Market Committee will convene to discuss how best to achieve the central bank's long-term aim of reducing inflation to the target rate of 2%. Yet the recent failure of Silicon Valley Bank, along with like 7 other banks, presents an immediate difficulty in the shape of a banking crisis. If they want to break the system, this is how you do it. Like, this is literally grade A. There's no other way to really do it as efficiently as this. You raise it by 0.75 and everything collapses. Furthermore, in February, the consumer price index increased by 0.4% and it increased by 6% over the course of a year. But investors' worries about a domino effect have caused the KBW Nasdaq Bank Index to drop by 27.6% over the last 2 weeks. You might have been noticing all the bank stocks have completely collapsed because the faith is quickly leaving. Moreover, the result of the FOMC meeting should address the dual challenges of lowering inflation and averting a financial crisis that might have knock-on effects throughout the economy. More likely than not, 63%, according to the CME FedWatch tool, are predicting that the Federal Reserve will target a rate at the forthcoming FOMC meeting of 0.25%. So people are always voting and saying or predicting where they think the Fed is actually going to land. In this scenario, a 25 basis point rate rise followed by a dovish Fed move is seen as a potentially catalyzing for a Bitcoin surge to $30,000, according to most experts. Moreover, analysts said they wouldn't completely rule out a surge if it happened this week. The idea, my friends, to wrap it all up, is basically this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. This one moment. Doesn't it sound completely ridiculous? We've been waiting for this one moment. We will find out. We will find out if they're raising it by 0.25, 0.50, 0.75. Will this be the last one? If they continue raising or we get indications that they're going to keep raising it, markets will fall because we can't take any more stress on the markets. They've been raising interest rates and it hasn't deterred inflation at all. So we're going to hear a couple of things. When they have these meetings, we're going to hear it publicly and you will see instantaneously what happens to the markets and where people think things are actually going to go. I would love, we heard before, I would love if this is going to be the last interest rate hike for this year, markets would recover in a spectacular form. Do I think we're going to see $1 million Bitcoin in 90 days if that happens? Probably not. But I think a $35,000, $40,000 Bitcoin by the end of summer, September, would definitely be in the cards if until the end of this year, there's no more reevaluation for anything. A lot happening. There's a lot going on. It's excitedly terrifying is the way that I like to talk about it. Or at least for me, like to come to the end of an event that I've been waiting for is always very exciting to me, but it's also like what's about to happen because We had all indications a couple of weeks ago that they were just going to continue raising rates until inflation got under control. But then 7 banks collapsed and government intervention. So will they keep trying to destroy the economy just to get inflation down? Regardless of how heavy the topic might have been, I do hope that you've all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do sincerely hope that it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for liking, listening, watching, subscribing, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.